Now arrives the hour of action.
We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
That to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. That whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it.
For depriving us in many cases of the benefits of trial by jury.
To subject us to a jurisdiction foreign to our Constitution and unacknowledged by our laws.
All experience hath shown that mankind are more disposed to suffer, while evils are sufferable, than to right themselves by abolishing the forms to which they are accustomed.
But when a long train of abuses and usurpations, pursuing invariably the same object, evinces a design to reduce them under absolute despotism, it is their right, it is their duty to throw off such government and to provide new guards for their future security.
We mutually pledge to each other our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor.
And we're going to take our country back from these people.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Marches Live. So glad to be back this week. Really happy to have Rod McCall back on the show. It's going to be an interesting kind of in-depth hour, and then after this hour, Elizabeth Ann is going to join us to talk to us about her situation, which was highlighted on the website Medical Kidnap. Shout out to Terry. So let's get right into it. Turn this down. Welcome back to the show, Rod. How are you?
Hey, doing pretty good. Thanks, Ted, for having me back.
Oh, you're welcome. Thanks for taking the time to do this. I'm going to adjust your camera just a little bit here in a second. So, where we left off in the last show was, and if just to recap, in your case, in Texas, or at least your county, your jurisdiction in Texas, you were allowed a jury, which is unheard of in family court. And that's something that I still want to delve into a little bit more as to the wording in the Texas Constitution, or the wording in that county, how we can all kind of apply that across the U.S. But setting that aside, you had just won full custody of your son Eric, and I'll have questions as you go along. But so you get this verdict. Explain to us that feeling that you had, and then what happened as you left the court, I guess, would be where to start this off. And as you get into this, I'm going to adjust your camera myself a little bit so people can...
Okay.
So
sure. To dive right in, as you asked, the trial was very difficult, to say the very least. Yeah. And as far as a trial, I had no idea just how special and rare it was, having never been involved with family law before my own situation. So my lawyer had prepped me all along. He said, Rod, don't expect a whole lot. Right. And we had again, it was an attempt by both sides to terminate parental rights. She had started it, she had asked for it, and so my lawyer had asked for us to terminate her parental rights. And it was really very, I can't express all the emotions, but after the jury read the verdict, I was shocked, I was awed, I was numb, I was elated. I was both happy and sad, scared and excited, and I really didn't know a whole lot of, okay, what does this mean? What do we do next? Where do we go? And the judge had told us before the verdict was announced, he said, there will be no celebration in this room. No matter what the outcome is, no matter what the verdict is, there will be no celebration, no loud outbursts, no crying, no clapping, nothing. So as soon as the verdict was read, my lawyer patted me on the back. I turned, my family was there, my friends were there, and he ushered me out to see them. And we were all kind of whispering and hugging and cheering quietly with each other. And I heard, I don't know exactly who said what. I just remember the conversation about where are we going to have Eric be picked up.
Right.
And again, I don't remember who said what. I just remember that they were talking about it. And the judge says, well, I do not want him brought here. Here being the courthouse. So my lawyer then ushers me out with my family, and he tells me, Rod, go home right now and get your son. And so my sister and my friend Sherry, who, we wound up getting married here a little over a year and a half ago. And so the three of us head on down to my car, and we take off to go. And normally it's a good 45-minute drive from the courthouse to my old house, and we made it in about 25.
Wow.
I was doing my best NASCAR impression as I'm driving down the highway, weaving in and out of traffic, and I was in absolute shock and stun again all the way. I just couldn't believe what had happened. And Eric was supposed to have been at school that day. But when we called the school to talk to the principal, who was very concerned about Eric as well, she said that Eric was not there, that he had been held, and I say this in air quotes, that he was homesick. And my first thought was, sick my tail end. So we told my lawyer and Eric's lawyer as soon as they walked in the courtroom that day, and they headed up to talk to the judge, and they told the judge same thing, that Eric was homesick where he should have been at school. Mm-hmm. So I was very concerned, and that's one of the reasons why my lawyer said, go now, get there before she does. And we did. And we were, I don't know, maybe 5-6 miles away. And I thought, I ought to probably give the police a telephone call and ask them to come and do a courtesy standby. That the exchanges that Eric and I had had in recent weeks had been getting more and more difficult. He was always acting up for his mom, running, screaming, throwing a temper tantrum, up until the moment he was in the car, the door was shut, and we started to move away. And then, boom, it did, like a light switch had been turned. He was happy and easy going.
Yeah.
So I called the police. They tell me that somebody had already called, that the police were actually already en route to the house. And I'm going, okay, pretty darn puzzled, to say the very least. So we pull up in front of the house, and there's a squad car there, and we identify who we are and why we're there. And the next thing you know, I'm up knocking on the door, and we had dogs. And so when I'm knocking on the door, I hear the dogs going crazy, barking, and as they always did whenever anybody would knock at the door.
Sure.
So no one answers. After, I don't know, a couple of minutes, I'm knocking again, and the dogs go nuts again. I do this 3 or 4 times, each time a little bit louder and a little bit longer. Nobody's answering the door. Now, I know there's people home because her mom and dad's vehicle is parked outside the front of the house. But they weren't answering, which was getting kind of frustrating. But I'm trying to be good, trying to be patient. More police show up. And after being there for about 7-8 minutes, maybe 10, I don't know. I don't remember my time minute by minute. But after a number of knocks, the police, more police show up, and one walks around from the side of the house asking what she drove. And when I identified the make and model of the vehicle, they said, well, she's just pulled into the back. And I'm thinking, oh, Lord, this is what I wanted to avoid. So I'm knocking a little bit louder and a little bit longer, and no one is answering, because every time I would knock, I would then take 3 or 4 steps back from the door, so that way when it would open, there would be no issues. It was after the last knock that when I stepped back and I see her mom and dad across the street, because I lived on a corner, and they were standing across the street, and I'm thinking to myself, why are they there? Why are they not in the house? They should be in the house. And it was, as I was pondering this question, that 3 gunshots ring out. And I'm in absolute shock. The police that were beside us and on the side of the house are screaming, "Get down, get down." My sister and Sherry, they take off and head behind our car, and I'm going, there's nothing to run from. And they're yelling, "Move, move, hide, get down." So I run over and I get behind Sherry and my sister, and of course nothing else is happening. So after a few seconds, I stand up, and honestly, Ted, I can't remember exactly all that I was doing and saying, other than I was horrified. Her mom and dad were trying to figure out what was going on, because they didn't hear anything. They just saw everybody duck and cover. And that's kind of when I lost it. And I will remember it was around 11:30. It was Friday, October 21st, 2011. It was a gorgeous Friday morning. We were supposed to go to lunch. We were going to have celebratory lunch. Eric was going to be able to see his grandparents, his aunts. I was going to see him. I hadn't seen him in almost a month by that point. And it ended. And here it is supposed to be. It's Friday. It's the start of a weekend.
Yeah.
And start of something, just not what I had imagined. And they ultimately break into the house. And I mean, I've lost it. I don't know all that I was saying or doing. I just remember losing it, screaming and yelling that she had killed my son. She had killed Eric, that Eric had been, was gone. And when the police chief walks out at some point, I walk up to him and I said, "Please tell me he is not gone. Please tell me that there is some hope that he is alive." And the chief shakes his head and he says, "No, I can't tell you that."
Yeah. There's different things going on in that part of the story. The first one, obviously, that sticks out in my mind is pathogenic parenting. There was something through this process, this family court process, that triggered a response in your ex-wife to try to make you, in Eric's mind, this bad guy, and that's why those responses when you initially picked up your son, that's why that happened, and that's why you speak at a lot of psychology events like the PA Symposium in Dallas. But on a more personal level, putting myself in your shoes at that moment, there's a couple other situations with deaths that have occurred in my life where I can pull and relate. But how old was Eric when this happened? Okay.
He was just 10 days shy of his 8th birthday.
8th birthday. 8th birthday.
Yep. His birthday is Halloween.
Oh, wow.
And was October 21st.
I didn't know that.
So 17 days from today will be the 6th anniversary. I call it his angel day.
Okay.
I heard someone mention that once before when they had a loved one pass away, and I thought that was a very nice way of saying that.
Yeah.
So I now call October 21st his angel day.
That is, I've never heard that, and my son is 9, and so by the age of 8, you're starting this relationship with this person. This person is mentally developing into a unique individual at this point. Not, when my son was born, I couldn't wait until he was 4, because at 4 he could then tell me what he wanted, when he wanted, how he wanted it, at least.
Sure.
And at this point, my relationship, even though I don't see my son because he's in Florida, things with my ex-wife and I are much better, and I could, and after the surgery I may, you never know what will happen, and I'm not going to have these issues of the courts alienating me from my son. They're out of the picture now, so the relationship is great, but I talk to him every day, and I cannot fathom that just disappearing.
It was one of the most challenging things that I have had to deal with.
Yeah.
Some days are pretty good and some days are less than pretty good. And this time of year is usually the hardest for me.
Yep.
It is the work that has come since, like doing the show with you, being in DC marching, being at the symposium in April. I will be down in Houston on the 20th of October at the Children for Tomorrow symposium. So those kind of things help kind of lift me up and give me purpose,
right,
to be able to better cope with all this.
And so one of the goals I see, or the end game, or in family law and CPS reform, is in some way, I mentioned this contract similar to a prenup that people would agree upon while they're in love and not going through a divorce.
Yeah.
And so I feel like if you guys already had this set up from the time you were married, any future children, 50-50, shared custody, that way, even in her mind, where if the courts weren't there to trigger this, I feel like even if she was mentally imbalanced and was leaning towards a more pathological parenting type, if it wasn't for the conflict in family divorce, if it just didn't exist and you guys had equal custody, do you think that would have changed everything if it was just automatic and you guys didn't need to go to court?
That's a great question. I don't know, but I would like to think so.
Yeah.
I absolutely like to believe that if we did not have to argue over Erica's property, to treat him as a possession, but instead as what he is, a child that needs to be raised by both parents, when both parents can provide a happy, healthy, loving environment. And I think we could have. I know I was able to do that. I think she wanted to do that. I think that she got so consumed with the fight that she lost track of maybe what she was really fighting for.
Yeah.
And I think that her mental, I don't want to call it mental illness, but her mental health concerns, I think, helped contribute to her inability to be able to see what she was doing, and that it helped greatly to contribute to her desperation.
Yeah.
She had convinced herself so much that I was the devil reincarnated, and anything less than my absolute removal from his life was going to be an unsuccessful attempt.
Wow.
And that's why she had me arrested. That's why she tried to ruin me as far as my career, my reputation, and then through the attempt to have Eric stripped from me legally through denying me my parental rights.
Yeah. I wonder, now researching and learning more and more and more about what we're all going through over the last year. I would love somehow to hear what her lawyers were telling her, or what her advisors were telling her to do. That's where I'd really tend to focus the blame, is the direction that her lawyers were taking this. Obviously, their interest is extending this process for financial gain. The courts have their own interest in creating a non-custodial parent. They don't mind if it's the mother or father, especially if they both are making good money, because they know that incentive money will come in. But with the jury, now this is where I can't think of it in a standard way. You had a jury, and the jury decided that she was on. I don't even know what was determined for time sharing, except that you were awarded sole custody. Not a judge did that, but a jury did that, and we want that. That's one of the things that we want.
Sure.
And not necessarily in family court, but in a criminal court. If somebody's going to be proved to be not unfit, and both parents already have 50-50 shared custody before the courts, I doubt that you would have sought out anything specific if it was already 50-50, but going through this process, you're attacked, you have to defend yourself. And I did the same thing. I knew that at the time, if I had sole custody of my son, it would be 50-50, because I would need help. I would want my ex-wife in my son's life, but because her lawyer, in my own situation, her lawyer said to me, well, why don't you just wait until he's 18 to have a relationship with your son? Are you kidding me? What are you talking? I guess he doesn't have any kids. And maybe that person should not be in family law at all. But if you're in criminal court saying that this person is unfit, it's going to happen a lot less if you already start off with 50-50. But that is where you would typically have a jury. Now, this jury, even though it was in family court, you're still a jury, and this jury gave you full custody of your son. So something was going on there, enough to that a jury it wasn't a petite jury of 6, it was a full 12-panel jury, right? 12 people,
yes,
determined
absolutely,
that you needed to have custody of your son Eric. And yeah, I mean, that is just incredible. So something was very obviously wrong in this situation, and to fix it,
yes, we actually had, I did not know, I did not see, I did not talk to her, but there was a member of the jury who did come to Eric's funeral, and my family chatted with her, and they shared that as the jury, they really struggled to believe her, that as the accusations, it's easy to say something, it was hard to prove. The evidence that they were providing was so circumstantial that to be laughable when they started listening to the medical professionals, when they listened to the mental health providers, and then they saw Eric's testimony through because they had videotaped the outcries, the CPS interviews. And so they broadcast those in the courtroom. She had tried to audio tape Eric misbehaving at the court-appointed play therapist. And that really seemed to have backfired.
Yeah.
Nurse had come and testified about the fact that Eric was on medication so much that he was missing, between the days off he was missing from school to the days that he was having to go to her office and spend a couple hours a day doing breathing treatments because of his, quote, asthma, were very, very concerning to her. And so she shared that. When Eric was at Children's Hospital 3 different times, we read into court records their statements of all the things that she was doing or not doing. And they said that all of that, I had to get up and testify. And I got to tell you, Ted, that was horrible. That was absolutely horrible. Yet the juror said that they felt that my testimony was very big in helping persuade them that I was not the problem, that I was desperately trying to protect Eric, and that his mother, in her attempts to protect him, were absolutely the wrong decisions. She couldn't have done anything more incorrect than what she had been doing. But it was interesting listening to what she had shared with my family, and it really helped provide a lot of insight to how they came to that decision, that it was 11-1. And I was very grateful that she came. I was moved that she showed up. I guess she had been in contact with a number of the other jurors that after they had learned that Eric had been killed, and they were just absolutely devastated, very pleased that they did what they did, feeling very justified, but very heartsick at the same time.
Was there any indication from that juror or anybody that you talked to wishing that they had said something at the end, as far as like the police go pick up this child? Hindsight obviously is what it is. And
yes, I have talked to the judge from my case on several different occasions.
Yeah.
And in the last conversation we had, actually back in May, he commented that as a judge, I was in a group, he was talking to a group of students, and I was in the room. He told them that as a judge, he makes decisions that sometimes he wishes he didn't. And he says there have been 2 decisions that have haunted me ever since. And he looked over in my direction when he said that. And because the judge had allowed Eric's mom to go home, in what he said, give her an opportunity to say one final goodbye. And she did. The downside is she said goodbye for all of us and took him away. And that haunts him as much as it haunts the rest of us. And I have been told by other lawyers, by other people who have gone through his courtroom, that he is one of the biggest advocates for ABPA, and that he is a champion for smelling out bullshit.
Yeah.
And
ABPA.
he does not tolerate those kinds of actions.
That's well, it's good. It's good that he realizes that. I mean,
I agree. I have been really pleased, and we have talked a couple of times about potentially working on a program to present at the Texas Family Law Convention that they have here annually in Texas about the effects of parental alienation.
Yeah.
And so I feel very excited that this may one day become a reality, as we will be able to address a captive audience.
Right.
That maybe we can push to start making more judges aware, though a number of them I have talked to here in our county have stated that they believe that parental alienation is a divorce dodge. That it is, while yes, they understand my situation and my case, it's more of an extreme scenario than something more commonplace. And I was kind of blown away by that. And as I've done a lot of court watching, I watch a lot of these judges, especially the more experienced judges, where they don't pay attention to everything that's being said in the courtroom. They miss a lot as they are, as they have told me specifically, multitasking. They're listening, but not real intent, because for many times they've made up their mind. Their decision has been made
before
the testimony even began. This is the 4th time I've seen this couple in here, and I know what I'm going to hear because I've heard it already 42 times this week. So I'll let them do their spiel, and I'll make sure they get their time. But unless I hear something really bizarre or dynamic, you know what, my mind's made up. So I got these reports I got to respond to, emails I got to communicate back with, or I've got judgments from other cases. So I need to hurry up and type these up. So I'll do that because, I have a child that I've got to get to a baseball game or a football game or cheerleading or whatever it might be. And as they were explaining this, I'm going, oh, Lord have mercy. Where is our true justice? If you're not listening to what I say, then you're missing key parts of what I'm trying to explain and how my situation is different from another person who's just making a bizarre claim. I have my information. I'm trying to prove to you, but you've already predetermined what you're going to do. You don't care what I really have to say. And I find that just extremely disappointing.
Yeah. Let's say you automatically had 50-50 from the beginning. Let's say her pathology, we say her because obviously you were married to a wife. It's not a gender thing.
Yes.
Her pathology still went south. And we know that's possible because at the symposium we had people from Sweden there, and they have 50-50, but they still have a pathological parenting problem. So let's say the alienation still occurred without divorce, and you guys have 50-50, and you went to criminal court. Now, right there, that's an if. If you already had this figured out, you're talking about a case reduction, I would guess, close to 100%. You take away the abuse and neglect aspect, and the caseload is gone. It's evaporated. There's no reason to go to court if there's already 50-50. But let's say there is neglect, parental alienation, or abuse, and you do go to court, you get a jury. And in this case, now, if you're not seeing hundreds of cases of, like you just said, the same people over and over and over again in your head, oh, this is another story, I've heard the same thing 42 times this week already, I know what they're going to say. Well, you're not going to have that. Not if 42 people don't need to be there. They shouldn't be there. I mean, it's unconstitutional to have 2 people in front of a judge who did nothing. And that's the problem. We took the process of fault or action for divorce and brought it with no fault divorce, and it just doesn't make any sense. It simply makes no sense to me. And when you get into it, as far as we have talking about it, it's criminal in my opinion that they kept the same process that was found to be unconstitutional and brought it into the new process. And really, in my mind, I think of lawyers, politicians who are also lawyers, who obviously made this decision based on their own interests. I mean, whether or not they could see the institution that would be created 40 years, now 46 years down the road, I don't know. But I would like to think not, because then it really would be criminal if they could foresee what they were doing. So, you know, this situation is going to change, and you're making a big impact throughout the country with what happened, getting people to understand what this parental alienation, what pathological parenting really is, and how the courts really initiate it most of the time. I would say, certainly in your case, it sounds like they initiated it, or the lawyers did, which is the court, the system. But moving past that, and our changes, what were the steps to get you through this? I know that there's every Tuesday you're in a group, and that's fantastic that you do that every week, I think, and I'm sure you are able to help people get through this. There are people out there who don't lose their children in such a way, who take their lives. So losing your children, how, I guess, go ahead and explain who helped you, how did they help you, and how do you continue to help others who have experienced this nightmare?
Sure. I was very, very blessed to have a multi-tiered support group. My family, first and foremost, stood beside me, behind me, picked my butt up, and carried me when I needed it. They were sympathetic. Another fantastic group is this support group. There is here in Dallas a group, they're the Divorce Recovery Group. They've been around since the mid-1980s, and they have helped tens of thousands of people going through a divorce, trying to work their way through it. And I had been part of this group for a year before the trial, before Eric had died, and had developed a very close relationship with many of the people that were there. As in books, I'm a big history guy, and they talk about soldiers in war forming this bond, this band of brothers type of camaraderie. And that's what we had created. There were men and women, and they had stopped being just people, but they became my brothers, they became my sisters. And it started, I had friends from the group that were there through the trial. Every day I had 3, 4, 5 people who came and were in the courtroom. And when word had gotten out that Eric had been killed, they flocked to my apartment, and they were there that afternoon, and they stayed with me. Oh, they would rotate in and out, bringing in food. They were there from that day until the following week when we had the funeral. Many of them came to the funeral. They then stuck around for the weeks after. They would come and hang out. Of course, I wasn't working. And so they would come, we would watch movies. They would come pick me up and take me out for lunch. Or they would say, hey, Rod, we're going to come by. We're going to pick you up. We're going to go watch a sporting event at a bar and grill. Or, hey, we're going to go to the movies. You're going to go. And it wasn't a question of if, it was, you're going to go. So we're going to see you there. And they wouldn't let me be by myself. So that was amazing. I had a therapist that I'd been going to, but when my job ran out, my insurance ran out. And she had called the day that Eric had died. And she said, Rod, when you're ready, come and see me. She says, I know that you don't have insurance, but you need to come. And she said, I will see you every week, and I won't charge you a nickel.
That's good.
And that was a big deal. But the thing that probably was the most stable was my wife. Sherry and I had become such great friends through our going through the divorce process, going through just going to these meetings, being involved in our social events. And she just, I can't express, she was the rock. Right. When I was, feeling really blue, she would point out, well, let's look at the positives. Well, why don't we flip it around and look at it? She was, like I said, she was there at the front door with me and my sister when Eric was killed. And she just took over. She took my phone, and she was the gatekeeper of my phone, taking messages. She was that pillar that kept me from just falling over completely. The others all played very important roles, but she was there 24/7. And without her, I'd have been toast, because once everybody else started leaving and going back to work, and the weeks turned into months, she was still there. and she was still at my side and was very good at, hey, how you doing? What are you doing? Well, don't sit at home. You've been at home for the last day and a half. Let's go do something. Or I'm going to come pick you up. Or we're going to go here. We're going to do that. And it really helped dramatically so that I was able to start doing things. And it helped a lot. So, yes, I would say it was the family. It was the divorce group. It was my therapist. But it was my best friend, Sherry. Who's now...
That's a good point.
She's a little more than just my best friend. Right. She's now my wife as well.
Well, that's just it. Is she wasn't your wife then? You think about it, and I think about Sherry and you when I met you guys for the first time, and you're tight, and you guys, she didn't live with you when you went through this. You guys were just friends. You weren't married yet, so you are in your place by yourself, going through this basically, and where a lot of people will be in this situation, they'll be generally by themselves after a divorce, and to get through that divorce, physically and mentally intact or whole as much as possible, you just simply can't do it yourself. Most people go right into alcohol or drugs, and to have that type of support there, obviously you had to keep yourself to, you couldn't let yourself go, is what I'm trying to get at.
Yes, it was. I will also say that there was a healthy dose of intervention from the man upstairs.
Yeah.
I was having trouble with God, trying to understand how could a kind, generous, wonderful, loving God have my son killed?
Right.
But yet he put in place all these people to be able to lend me the support that I needed when I needed it the most. And I came to learn that God gave everybody this horrible thing called free will. And he gave my ex-wife free will. And she did what she did because of free will, but he put in place that support network I just described.
Mm-hmm.
And while I could not have prevented her from doing what she did, he made sure that I was not an additional casualty. And for that, I say thank you, God.
Thank you, God. We, this whole thing I do, started out as a promotion for something specific, and through that, I realized that changing perceptions of the general public is going to help tremendously in professionals or us as a movement changing these things that we shouldn't have to change. They should have been common sense, and so for you to, you were one of the first voices I heard through Mommy Interrupted, and I had to listen to all of those shows because I helped transfer them to when she transferred her show, but I didn't listen to all of them. I was a pretty regular listener of the show, so I'd catch most of them live, but I don't think I'm not sure if I caught yours live or not, but I listened to it twice, I think. Only because you're listening and you start a few of the key words you pick up on right away, the way things transpired, and then amazing things too, like the jury. You know, the whole story is so interesting to me, and I'm sure to a lot of people. But your voice, the way you say your story and tell your story, and you say you go on tangents, but I don't hear it. You don't. You seem to be very focused. It's amazing. It's good in that sense of getting people aware, the general public aware of what is going on. And you've spoken in front of panels of judges. What do you call them? I don't know why I can never remember that term, but there's a clip of a video. When I was testifying before the Texas House of Representatives. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. The words that you said, I hope, resonated with them at the same time. They're, 42 of the same things in the last week, I'm sure, is what they're thinking. And but the more we talk about it, the more we bring awareness to these issues, I just hope the further and further it gets, so when we're ready, so we can make these changes, and in the public eye, it will be like, yes, these things need to happen because of what I heard, because of Rod's story, because of this person's story and that person's story, and this lady Elizabeth who's coming up in a few minutes. All of these things put together, I'm hoping that now this show, this thing that I made, will go a long way to bring attention to the changes that need to be made, and along with other shows like Kirk's Law Corner on Mondays. He talks a lot about common law, but everything that needs to be changed in family court and juvenile court and CPS. And then, of course, the Far From Normal Tuesday, those guys are interviewing all kinds of people in and out of the movement, people I haven't heard of, and they bring a very positive twist to things that is needed to is really needed to hear the positive things and people being upbeat. I think coming in the future, this show continuing may reflect a lot of the messages that I get, which are similar to your story. It's a few times a week I get a new story. I get contacted by somebody new, sent pictures or videos of just the most horrible things, and this is the reality that I'm living in. And I think at this point, that's what I need to start sharing, is some of the more horrible stories. Like I had somebody recently in Maine who just lost his 3 kids to CPS for no reason whatsoever. That brought up old charges, juvenile charges, and used that as an example to remove his nothing current, not who he is today, who he was 10, 15 years ago, possibly before his kids were born. They're using that stuff to take his kids away. So these things, I think that's the direction I want to go, and because it can't be happening. And your situation could have been perfect, with no problems. We wouldn't even know who you are right now. But instead, what happened, and it sheds light on what is wrong, what needs to be looked at, and the simple fact that we shouldn't be in this situation unless it's absolutely needed. I mean, that system is what triggered your ex-wife.
Yes.
And without that just needs to disappear. To me, it's common sense. You take out what creates this mess, and you no longer have a mess. Right?
Sure. And that's what helped me promote wanting to write the book.
Yep. There it is right there.
And that too has been part of my healing process.
Yeah.
But also the response I've gotten. I have been so just blown away with the response I've gotten. There was a gentleman, I don't remember if I shared this when we chatted last time, but there was a gentleman at the symposium who had come from Canada, and he said, Rod, I came because I wanted to meet you. I've heard about you. I've listened to you. I got your book, but I wanted to meet you. I wanted to find out what you are about. And I was going, wow, me, little me. And so the book, the people that have responded by reading the book has just made me feel very pleased that, again, my goal of not just surviving, but changing, trying to address the message that is being listened to, is very grateful. And so being part of your program and being on not once, but being lucky enough to come back for a second visit has been terrific, because you're right. The conversation and dialogue has to change, because I am so distraught every time I hear of another family being ripped apart and destroyed by family law and their attempt to do what is right for the child.
Right. It's hard to back that up when the profits are in the hundreds of billions. It's pretty clear, crystal clear, why it exists. And it's certainly not...
Follow the money.
Yeah, it's not for anything to do with children. Not at all. Not one single iota. So, and it was really the way everything played out. I think worked out great, because we were able to talk about your situation, and so people would be looking forward to your speech at the event. And then now, for anybody who missed the event or any of the videos of it, they understand why you speak, and why you wrote the book, and why you continue to be an advocate for this movement, because your story is everybody's story is unique to themselves, but we're all going through the same thing. Your situation is it has the potential to help the people who are at that next level, that most of us just don't want to fathom. So for people in the future watching this, if you're watching this live now, hopefully they'll be able to get something out of this and contact you, be able to ask you, where do I look for help? And
well, I do have an email, fortheloveoferic@gmail.com, so they're always free to ask questions. I have the website that promotes the book as well, which is fortheloveoferic.com, and that's ERYK.
Yep, I have the book right there. You can't see it, but it's on the broadcast.
Okay.
For the Love of Eric, right there. I'll blow this up real quick. Surviving Divorce, Parental Alienation, and Life After by Rod McCall. And there's Eric McCall right there.
Yes.
So if
that's the last picture I have of him.
I was
first day of second grade.
I was wondering that. I'm hesitant to ask that. So I wish you luck in this month, knowing now what this month means to you, and on a personal level, if I'm sure you have plenty of support, but if you want to reach out and talk to me, I'm available most of the time. I'm almost
Thank
always
you.
sitting here doing something. So,
well, thank you. I appreciate it.
thank you very much for your time. It's 9:01, so this is the first segmented show. If you would mind scrolling through the comments, I haven't looked at any of them. Scrolling through the comments on Facebook, the comments of this video, if there's any questions, to see if there's any questions to answer, that would be fantastic. I'm sure people would appreciate it. So until I see you next time, maybe in Houston.
All right.
Unless you call me.
All right, you bet. Thanks, Ted. I appreciate it. Appreciate being part of the broadcast tonight.
Thank you so much. I appreciate your time, Rod, and thank you for going to D.C. and sharing there and everything.
No worries. My pleasure.
Have a great night, Rod.
All right. You too, buddy. Bye.
Bye-bye. All right. So, first segmented episode. And Rod, if you wanna stick around for a minute,
okay,
feel free. It's completely up to you. So now I'm waiting for Elizabeth to call in. I thought she might have called in by now. Hopefully everything's okay. So there's probably a 7-second delay. Maybe she's just waiting until the very last second. But maybe I will take just a quick break. I don't usually do that. Let's see what I have for Muzak here. Real quick. Well, I can go into the introduction first. Let's do that. So our next guest was featured on the website Medical Kidnap. Big shout out to Terry. Her name is Elizabeth Ann. And I'm going to let her tell her story in a second here, or when she comes on. But I looked up the judge in her case, and I am not sure, I don't know if I can mention her name here, so I'm not going to, but I probably will be posting things about this person very soon. And I found a website called gavelbangers.com. Gavelbangers.com, where you can write a review of your judge. This is something that we have been talking about in the past, and here it is. I need to get in touch with these people. I want to read some of these reviews of this person who should be in orange, not black, and then I'll introduce Elizabeth. She's already waiting in the waiting room. So let me make sure here. Hey, Elizabeth, just give me a minute. I'm going to read some of these reviews. Meet Rod, Elizabeth, Rod. And let me just pull this up for you guys real quick. Oh, wait. I need to go back over here. It's pretty incredible. Alright, transition. So, reviews of this judge in Elizabeth's case. And you can see them if you're watching. I won't read everything all the way through, just the first few words. So, first review of this judge in Pennsylvania is... well, I guess, they're saying the person's name, so I don't know how to get away from the reviews if random people are saying the judge's name. But Vernon is the most disrespectful judge in the court system. When Judge Vernon was DA, she had a habit of handing out gifts to her friends. Do not re-elect this judge. I have been in front of Judge Vernon countless times and find her to be the most knowledgeable and compassionate member of our bench. Hey, there's a good one. There's one. Maybe that's her. All right. She allowed 2 officers to get away with murder of a 12-year-old child. Sounds like there is some money changing hands there. She is as crooked and arrogant as they come. Here's one. Best judge that money can buy. If you're on the right political team. Here's what you get when you deal with the... Oh, there's her full name right there. Uniontown Barracks of State Police may have interfered in a child molestation investigation of the commander's politically correct friend and prominent businessman. That certainly sounds interesting, and something a judge would get a lot of money to pick and choose her own facts. Her father was a corrupt politician and a piece of shit lawyer who was disbarred twice. The apple doesn't fall far from the tree. Wow. All right, well, without further ado, let me just press a couple of buttons here, and I just want to make sure everything's up here, because I really was going really fast. Is this it? Okay. There it is. Welcome to the Marchist Live, Elizabeth. How are you tonight?
I'm hanging in there, trying to.
Good, good. So, if you guys caught the ad for the show earlier today, you know the physical situation of Elizabeth. She and we're all getting a better understanding of what medical kidnap is. And I wanted to state some things that I remembered reading in the past, but really this list of all these wonderful reviews of the judge in your case, I just couldn't get past. It stopped me in my tracks. And they just continue on. I don't know how many. It says something like 7,000 something people have looked at this. 7,060 people. I don't know how many reviews there are, but everybody you got to check out gavelbangers.com. Got to check it out. I'm going to go do my judge in my case from Florida, absolutely. So, but medical kidnap is focused on something unique. And I stumbled on an article, and I cannot recall where it was, but in the business I used to be in construction, anytime you're working in a public area, you have to be very aware of ADA regulations. And I know the ADA is starting to get very involved in this situation, but the way laws are written and the way CPS offices find loopholes in this is, if you have a disability, even a simple mental disability, as simple as dyslexia, CPS will use that to take your children. We know that the couple in Florida, the 7 children, he just came over from Puerto Rico. The fact that he has 7 children, or the family has 7 children, which makes them takes a lot of money. They just moved there from Puerto Rico a year or so prior. That you can't just take kids away for being poor. They used the fact that she was dyslexic.
Fuck is so important? What?
They used the fact that she was dyslexic to take their 7 children.
Sorry, that's my husband.
That's all right. So 3 years later, they were finally returned. And in this situation, what happened is Elizabeth was in a motorcycle accident, and you can see the pictures in the ad for the show. She lost her leg, and CPS used that disability now as a way to take her children. And this is why Americans for Disability Act is coming into play here, is stepping in, and hopefully will be helping us in ending these types of travesties. So without further ado, Elizabeth, from whatever point you want to start, the floor is yours. I have a tendency to pick out words as you go and probably ask questions based on... Oh, yeah. Hold on 1 second. I lost you for a second there. Let's get rid of this. There you are. All right. Let me do this, and that. And there we go. Oh, okay. I can get rid of this now, too. And again, the floor is yours, Elizabeth, however you want to proceed. I guess we can go back and forth a little bit, but let's start with this. When was the first time you started having interactions with CPS, I guess, is a good place to start.
Well, I would have to say it would have started before my accident and also before my first husband died, years and years before that. But when he died, it became a lot worse. His foster family then stepped in and tried to take my kids off of me and wouldn't let me see them. I got them back in 2008. And then in 2009 was my accident. Now, in 2009, the foster sister-in-law would be foster sister, sorry, would be my foster sister-in-law. Came into the picture after I had my accident, which would be 9 years almost now. 7, 8, yeah, almost 9 years. That she came into the picture and she wanted to help me with my children. This was her words, was, "Let me help you, Liz. I won't ever take your kids away from you. You're a good mom. I would never do that to you. I'm a grandmother myself. I would never do that to you." Saying that it was not a custody consent form or anything to do with custody whatsoever, that it was only a guardianship paper so that she could put the kids through school and doctors. She lied. After I signed it, about a year later, after she was letting me see my kids anytime I wanted to, she took me places on my wheelchair. Once I started walking, she then started her false allegations. It was as if she was trying to be my friend or pretend to be my friend up until that point when I started to walk. That paper that I signed under the medication was in fact a custody consent form. Yeah. And I was on 3 prescribed narcotics at the time.
Wow.
Yeah.
So at the time you were in the hospital. This is after the accident?
After the accident, she came to the hospital to see me. I don't remember that. When she came to the house, when the paper was signed, was in my kitchen, in my house.
And at the time, you needed help, and the thought was this is a way so she could legally pick up the kids from school, bring them to the doctors, sign things at the doctors. Correct. Because you couldn't physically go, right?
Right, exactly. Now, that was not true at all. And she knew the medication I was on when it was signed. She knew what, what kind of situation I was in. I wasn't able to walk and was told I probably would never walk. I had a ruptured spleen and 30 broken bones in my left leg. I had 6 surgeries since then, but every single year since the time she's had the kids, she come up with a new false allegation, from neglect to abuse to indecent assault to molestation to rape tied and gagged. Last year, she says, I took the kids to a strip club, watched men rape them, then tried to kill them. I was able to prove that 100% a lie. So after that, everything else was unfounded, of course. CPS unfounded it all. But I had a child since then that got taken straight from the hospital when he was born. He had opiates in his system because I was prescribed opiates during my pregnancy, of course.
But because of your history with CPS, they looked into it and used that.
Yep.
And that's why they say, did you have any involvement with CPS growing up at all?
Myself, I was dumped from one home to another, to another, to another in the Amish. We don't have foster care in the Amish. We know nothing about custody, like courts or anything like that whatsoever. We don't use that stuff. We just go by the church. The church places us, you know.
Right. And that's interesting. I want to learn a little bit more about that, because that's something that I know that Kirk has talked about before, that the church should have, in one sense, the church should have some type of jurisdiction, or could have, or did have. And so in the Amish community, or in Pennsylvania, so in the Amish community, they do have a bigger role. And
yes.
And that's mainly because of the communities. What
happened in my case was my mom came, like we would say, the outsider, somebody that's not Amish, got pregnant by somebody from the outside, and then went back to have me because they promised they would not take the baby off of her, which was me. Well, she was breastfeeding me when they walked in and took me off of her. So it's just as bad as CPS, if you ask me, if not worse, because they then gave her a choice of either staying Amish and watching my aunts and uncles raise me, or leaving and never having no contact. Well, I was 11 years old when my aunt that was raising me told me that she was not my mom. In fact, my mom had died from a car accident. Now, that was a big lie. It was just so that I would not go and try to find my mom.
Right.
When I was 17, I went to the police about all the abuse that I was going through, sexual, mental, physical, all of it. And the police asked me my mom's name, and I said it was, and then said her name. And the cop said, wait a second, she's not dead. I know her. It just happened that my mom had a case with them that same year, and he knew my mom's name. So he looks it up, calls it in on the radio. Sure enough, comes back with an address, and he takes me to her.
Wow.
She was alive. She did die a year and a half after that, though. So I only had a very short time. And this is why I'm trying to speak out to get help with my children, because I don't want them to grow up without their mom. Their dad, they're going to have to because he died. But me, there's no reason they have to grow up without their mom like I did. Right. And I don't want them to have to, just because of all these false allegations that we finally can prove to be all lies. And
there is obviously this individual who's the foster parent. She has two of your children. Is that correct?
Yes, she has two oldest.
So she gets the incentives, $100,000 a year for each child. That's a lot to give up.
Plus, she also gets Social Security from their dad dying.
Oh, interesting.
Survivor benefits. Yep.
Okay, so she's really like completely taken over your life.
Yeah.
And gets paid handsomely for it. Now what about is she related to you in any way?
She would only, not by blood, would she be related to me or my husband or the children. She would only be a foster sister to my first husband. Not my husband now, but my first husband that died.
I see. Foster, because your husband was in foster care then. So a foster sister.
Yeah, this same family did the same thing to my kids as grandparents. They actually did time in jail for some. Well, I do believe that the kids' grandfather, it was proven that he did it, but the grandmother did not. Right. And this same family that has my two children is now brainwashing my children, just like they brainwashed the other kids, the aunts and uncles and everything, into thinking that their mom and dad did this to them. You know, and did the dad really? I believe so. He's on the Megan's Law. Did the mom? I don't believe it, because I know that I didn't do it, and I was accused of it as well by the same exact family. So we're all being victimized by the same family that did this over 20 years ago.
It's, once you know the system and you know what's involved, and you know that being a foster parent will make you $100,000 a year richer per child, that's a pretty big incentive to be a foster parent.
And it's sad. That's very sad, because our children are not, they're not for sale. They're not.
Right.
We should never ever have to worry about somebody using our children for money.
And it's our money. It's the taxpayers' money. It's our Social Security money being used to reward these people. I would much rather have my money used to have children placed with their family, if not their parent for whatever reason, then as close immediate family members as humanly possible. I guess a foster sister-in-law would apply, and on the very outside as a last resort, possibly.
Yeah. I agree with you there. But I have family members, actual blood family, that want to adopt my children. Plus, my husband wants to adopt them. And do you think they're going to let us? No.
No, because they wouldn't get the same $100,000 then. If it's a family member, they wouldn't get. So, all right, you have this incentive program to put kids with foster parents. That same program does not incentivize placing those same kids with their extended family. So, so CPS has to seek out any stranger they can to give these kids to in order to receive the money. Right. Why is it written that way? I mean, I'm not asking you specifically unless you have the answer, but it's just mind-boggling. It's the same. So this is Title 4E. Title 4D is now. Do you have to pay child support to this person too?
Believe it or not, just on Saturday, this last Saturday, I got paperwork stating that I'm supposed to pay child support. Finally, she found out that I was working. I'm disabled. I lost my leg last year, and I was working for 3 months straight there. I worked as a painter and a cleaner, but it got too hard. I couldn't do it anymore. She found out that I was painting and I was not on SSI, and what did she do? First thing she did was file for child support, and she won't even let me see my kids, not even supervise, nothing.
So you have no visitation. She's getting $200,000 a year from my Social Security, and now on top of that, she wants you to pay child support. That's awesome. Thank you.
Well, I got back on SSI, and I'm
America.
Exactly.
America. What the fuck has happened to
That's
you?
exactly what I called the domestic relations, and I asked them. I said, what am I supposed to do here? I said, I don't even see my kids. Am I supposed to pay, even though I only worked 3 months? And they said, not if you're back on SSI. You don't have to. But the thing is I was willing to stay off of it and keep working, but it's really hard with a prosthetic leg that I just got in January. And fighting the system, I have to take off work all the time to go to court, and most jobs, they don't like that.
Right.
It was just really, really hard. I mean, I was up on a ladder painting and doing inside and outside windows, and it didn't matter what it was. I did it because I wanted to show that I can do this. I don't need the system. I don't want to be in this system, but
right. I mean,
looks like it's not going to happen.
I mean, for you to prove that you are a fit parent and you deserve your children back, and you signed those papers somewhat in duress, not understanding what they meant, thinking that this was a way for this person to help you since you needed help because of your accident. To get past that in a court of law, the standard of proof that you need is to such a high standard that and you can prove it. You can prove it.
Yes.
But then for a judge to then rule in your favor on top of the fact that, okay, now you're going to be paying child support, that means that the courts get their cut. Also, they get $1.66 of every dollar you pay. The judges know that. They need to bring in their revenue. So that's a hurdle. This individual, the foster parent, is going to do anything to keep that $200,000. Anything.
Oh yeah.
And so the burden of proof for you is higher than the actual proof. You have to get past the incentives. You have to get past false allegations. It's insurmountable. Where the other side of it is, their burden of proof is so low, they can literally use hearsay, even perjury, as we all know from a lot of the videos that we've seen, to take your kids. So their burden of proof to take your children is very, very low. These are things that obviously have to change. What in your case is there? What are your hopes for the future in your situation? Does it look? I mean, I'm sure you can prove, beyond
a doubt, yes.
Yeah, that your children should be with you, your family. But as we all know, once in the system, the likelihood of getting them back is very low. We have success stories like the one in Florida, like the one in Texas, like Brian Kinter, and Brian's situation, because it happened early comparatively in this time frame of things, it cost him $3 million in 7 years. But because of these because of the people blazing the trail, like Mr. Kinter, the likelihood of winning gets higher, the likelihood of getting justice, not winning, the likelihood of what should happen will happen, is more likely to happen because of people like Kinter and others, and eventually these incentives will end. Like I said before, the reason for the show, for the most part, is to make people aware, get the public awareness out there that this has to change. This shouldn't be happening. And
I agree.
This, so I wish it would happen tomorrow. I wish I could go into these places, these foster care places, these CPS offices, freaking Terminator style, and just get people's kids back, because that would be the right thing to do compared to what's happening. I mean,
absolutely.
I would much rather see $100,000 going to an intact family than to tear a family apart. But you don't want $100,000. I mean, you could use it. I'm sure we all could. You just want your family back.
Right. I'm being told to do a federal lawsuit and sue all these people and do this and do that. I don't want any money. I just want my kids, And other people are saying, well, if you do a federal lawsuit, maybe they'll just back off. No, they're not going to ever just say, okay, yeah, we messed up, so here you go. Not going to happen.
No, you need, going to a federal court or a federal appeals court, if you've already gone to juvenile court, is a good idea. It's a roll of the dice. Like, I'll send you the information of this case in Texas after the show is done, and just scroll down to page 15 and see what the verdict was. It's a whole page of how CPS violated this parent's constitutional rights, and the child was given back, and CPS was they have to pay for this person's attorney fees, but there was no damages given, not yet. But to have the money up front to pay for an attorney, I mean, just the retainer.
It's ridiculous. I've put $10,000 in just attorney fees in these last 5-6 years.
And where do you stand? I'm sure those retainers are far used up by now. I mean,
yeah, they're far used up, and I've fired 5 or 6 attorneys so far.
Yeah.
And I'll pay the retainer, and they'll have the money there, and then I'll find out, oh, they're talking to the other side about this, or they're doing this and that, and I simply don't trust attorneys at this point. I do have a very good one right now that I am hoping and praying is going to work out, but I just don't know. All I know is at this point we're going for visitation.
Right. Simple.
Yeah, like we just filed today actually for a custody modification from what was done under the medication. Now that sounds really, really easy, but we've already had 3 different attorneys go in with me, and I went in by myself once that they just denied me. And it seems like every time that I get rid of one attorney, then they're okay. Now that they don't want to go as far as taking into real court, so I get rid of them. Yep. Well, this next one, this one that I have right now, he seems like he's more of a bulldog, really, as you want to say. He's pretty expensive, but if that's what it takes to get him home, I don't care, or just see him. Like I told him, I said, I don't want to file for full custody and get the kids home and rip them out of a home they've been in for 7 years. I want to start with visitation, let them get to know me, the real me, not the one that they're telling them that I am, right, and that I don't love them, and that I molested them and I raped them and all this other stuff. It's like this. I know from being a victim of my own and being hurt in that way, you don't trust people the way it is, but if you do, it takes a while to get to know somebody and then trust them again. Sure. If somebody sits there and says something like that, like my mom, I didn't trust her when I first met her, but it was 17 years I was told the same thing over and over and over. She hated me. She'd rather kill me than look at me,
And this is
and it was all a lie.
It is. And that is parental alienation. That is pathological parenting to a T, whether it's a biological parent or a foster parent. The courts initiate it, and obviously they did in this case. Well, I guess technically tricking you into signing that paperwork was the first step, but
well, that's where I don't understand it. Is this case is never, these kids' case was never in court since I was in my accident, besides the mediation hearings. Other than that, like, there was never a due process in that case whatsoever.
There used to be more due process in juvenile court until the family court, until the incentives, and really the family court process has completely corrupted the juvenile court process to the point where there's, between the time since the early 90s when I was in the system as a child to now, it's a completely different. You if you base anything off something from the early 90s on a case today, you might as well burn your money, because you're going to go nowhere. There is no justice, not even compared to the early 90s. After the incentives kicked in 97 and then again in 2002 in Title 4E, well, specifically 2002 and 4E, I mean, it's completely changed to a system focused on incentives, on revenue. It is a financial institution. It is not an institution of justice or a house of justice. And less, I mean, we go back to 1970 with this, but you had something
it's way different,
resembling justice up until 97. After that, it's completely different. And that's where we have to start changing perceptions. It's been 20 years now, and really the last 10 years have been the most destructive. So we're getting there little by little. Hopefully the views on these shows start getting upwards of, one of the shows I had at one point was 10,000 views, and I don't know how many there are now, but ups and downs. Yeah. This is going to end. It's just going to take some time, but in the meantime, you're going back to court just for at the minimum, supervised visits, and your lawyer think
Yes.
that's. I mean, you're the biological parent. If they're going
Right.
to, and now it looks like she's taking you to court for child support.
Yeah.
What do you think the outcome of that is going to be? Any
The
thoughts
child
there?
support itself will be dismissed because I will be back on SSI. And as soon as I have the proof of still getting SSI all this time, like there's nothing that she can do or even can try to do, because once you get SSI, they can't touch it. The fact that I worked for the 3 months, from what Social Security is saying, because I had a meeting with them, yeah, I'm going to have to pay back the money that I got for working while getting SSI, but I still got the SSI during the time. So it doesn't matter.
Right. Yeah,
So
it's a very hard process to get on that program. They don't just hand it out. You know, when I got
No.
yeah, I mean, so you need to have something very severe happen to get on disability like that.
Yeah, my disability started before the accident, even that.
Oh yeah.
I started getting SSI, and I actually wish and actually don't understand how I even got it with just a mental disability at the time. I started getting it when I was 17 for what they said was bipolar. Now they're saying is PTSD from everything I've been through.
Sure.
I don't have bipolar, but I got the SSI for the PTSD. Okay, now that I have my leg surgeries, I had 6 surgeries in 7 years to try to fix a leg that was not fixable, and still lost a leg. Now I have my new leg, and I don't even want SSI. I'd rather be out working, and now I can't. You know, it's almost like, how would you say?
It's a sick game. You're in this.
Yeah.
You're going through legal abuse right now, which you shouldn't be going through. You should have your children and have a normal life, and taxpayers should not be paying for this foster parent $100,000 a year per kid when you are a fit person, your surgeries are over with, this individual helped you when you needed help, now wants the children. Well, too bad they're not your freaking children, lady.
Right.
And I don't want to pay for these kids to be in your custody when they can be with their mom for nothing.
Right. And their new dad too. I mean, like he's the best dad you could ever find. He's made them all beds,
right,
and he's never even met them. You know,
that's very lucky.
You can't even imagine. You know,
their father died. What did their father die of? If you don't mind me, I don't want to bring.
No, it's he was drinking and driving.
Oof.
Yeah, accident.
Yep. Yeah, I had a buddy that happened to. Somebody I worked with
Yeah,
at the time.
It was very hard. It really was. But, you know, I look at it this way. My kids, the reason I believe that I lived in my accident was to give my kids a good life.
Mm-hmm.
And I will say before my accident, I was not the best mom. I was a drug addict for years. It's now almost 11 years that I'm clean. But going back to that, like, I'm like, you know, I wasn't ready to be a mom when I became a mom, but I became a mom, and I tried, you know, and yeah, there was abuse between me and their dad, and I would leave, and I'd get PFAs, and I'd drop them, I'd go back and forth, and it was horrible. But the thing is that accident actually opened my eyes to how fast life can be gone. And I swore if God just saved my life that day, that I would never do a drug a day in my life again. And let me tell you, I have not, other than the prescribed medications. And I'm off of those for over a year now. I got it off, my leg off, in September of last year, and I was off all pain meds by November.
Congratulations, Elizabeth. That's a story we hear over and over and over again. And, you know, one more recently is if you have a situation with drugs and alcohol and CPS is involved, you do what they say. It's eye-opening. If you have children and they're taken away because of something you did, that's going to change your life. That's going to wake you up.
Yeah.
And what was happening wasn't on your side of things wasn't right, but you changed that. You had a wake-up call. You did what they said. You did everything you needed to do. On top of that, with the accident, you did what you had to do. At this point, at the point when you're recovering, they say you do this, you do this, you do this. You go to this therapy. You prove to us that you've changed, that you're over this. You're rehabilitated. You're no longer on drugs, and you get your kids back. But that's not what happens.
That's not true at all. I did everything CPS asked me to do with my youngest child. They took straight from the hospital when he had opiates in his system. And I did absolutely everything they asked me to do, and they still took my rights away. So, and even my visits were cut when the judge that you were talking about in the beginning of the video, the same judge that did the medical kidnap paper, same judge has my youngest child's case. The same exact judge sat there and said in court under oath that she was not going to make any ruling on CYS's behalf or my behalf that day because my son's attorney was not there that day. I went home. I found out later that week when I called to schedule my visit that my visits were stopped that day. How is that possible? And they did the visit stop. Reason they want to stop the visits is because I missed a couple visits. I had my knee replacement and my rod removal in January. My visits were stopped in January because I couldn't make it 3 hours away for an hour.
I wanted to touch on that. So, you were going through these surgeries, and the doctor said you can't. I don't advise you to travel 3 hours for your visit. That's how far away your son was, your youngest son. And even with the doctor saying you're going to have to miss these visits, you followed what the doctor said for your own health, which is ultimately the health of your family, because if you die, then you don't have a family.
Right.
And CPS used that to stop your visits altogether.
Yes. Yeah, and I was even going down on crutches just to make sure that they know that I really do want to be there. Yeah. It didn't matter how bad it was at Christmas time. It was so bad. My foot was so swelled up. I could push in on the top of my foot and the dent would stay in. It was so dead. Okay, so when they finally said that they were going to do the knee replacement in January, I was like, okay, well, maybe that's going to fix it. It made it worse.
Right.
My foot completely died off after that. So, you know, it's unbelievable. And then not being able to go to those visits and them taking my visits away, then they go for my rights next. After I did everything they asked me to do, I completed all of it.
Wow.
I don't understand how it's even possible. I mean, even the judge said the day of my trial, custody trial of my youngest child, that she said, word for word, CYS or CPS, whatever you want to call them, that I did in fact do everything on my family service plan. But she said she needed 15 days to look into the case before she makes her ruling. Now, she waited 8 months after she said 15 days. 8 months I sat on pins and needles and waited to see what her ruling was going to be. And in those 8 months, Medical Kidnap got a hold of my story, and they had put it out nationwide. And one of my supporters had wrote on my Justice for the Bylers page that he made up for me that the judge shall do the right thing or she could regret it. She then, 2 weeks later, she dropped took my rights away. 2 weeks after he mentioned her name on the story. Gone. Wow.
It's unbelievable. I was just starting to upload the pictures so people could see them again of your leg. I just shared one. So that's what your leg looked like right there before they amputated it. And so what exactly the visitations happened, or they took them away just after the amputation.
For the youngest child, I never had visitations with the two oldest, only when she allowed it. Okay. Now this is the biggest part of where you can see a trail line, is where it started out with neglect, went to abuse, went to indecent assault, molestation, rape, tied, gagged. Then kids to a strip club tried to kill them. Okay, she's leaving a huge trail there. Mm-hmm. From one thing being unfounded, then she'd go in and say something worse. Every single time that something was unfounded, she'd go in and say something worse.
Right.
You know, and it's like, really, how far are you going to go? And I even told my husband a few times, I said, you know, the only thing that she hasn't used yet is that I tried to kill my kids. And then, boom, there it was. Last year, she said I tried to kill them. Really? That's the only thing she hadn't used yet.
Oh my goodness.
It's like, where do you go? What do you do? You know, my husband says he lost me a long time ago when this started. He says, last year when you lost your leg and you got off the medication and finally realized what happened and that you might be able to do something about getting these kids home, that's all you do. That's all you think about. Who can you talk to? Who can you go see? I said, babe, you got to understand, this is my kids. Mm-hmm. He said, they're my kids too, and you're my wife. You know, and he's getting to the point where he can't see me crying over my kids all the time. All I want from anybody is give me a second chance.
Right.
God gave me that second chance. Why can't they? You know,
too much.
I just want
involved.
A hug from my children. What is so wrong with that?
Yeah, I really believe you take away these incentives that were created, and the incentive then becomes to give the kids to the family.
Yeah.
That it's
the youngest child's foster care system, the youngest child's foster family, I should say, they want to adopt him now that my rights are gone.
Right.
Okay? And I just found out that the appeal was denied last week. So I'm guessing he's probably being adopted right now, and I don't know, but because they won't tell me anything.
That process happened 15 to 22 months after he was taken, I assume.
He's been gone for 3 years.
3 years. Wow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So yeah.
It's been continued and continued and continued so much. It's like every time I'd go to court, it was continued for some other reason, and then it was continued again, and then I'm just sitting there like, what do you mean it continued once again? Really? You know, I think it was 6 times in a row that it was continued. If I'd have to look back, I can't quote 100%.
And that's simply because without a verdict, it says right, and I could pull it up, but right in the law, if the parent and children are not put back together between 15 and 22 months, they can be adopted out. And so that was written first, and then you add incentives to that. So what's happened is they just stall, and they stall, and they stall until that magic number.
Ah, that makes sense. Okay.
Yeah. It's the number. Yeah. That's the number one way children are being put in foster care these days is not due process, not because of what the parents did, right or wrong. It is this time frame. 22 months goes by, parental rights are terminated, child is fostered out, and the incentive money starts rolling in. The big bucks.
Okay, now I have another question too. Like, the foster care family, before CWES even got involved, was sending me picture text messages. Like, I screenshot all of them. I have over 100 of them. Okay, that they begged and pleaded me to leave their son with them, sending me pictures of their family, how happy they are. Mommy this and mommy that, talking about mommy and daddy being them. Okay. I took that to court. They didn't even want to see it. They changed, the foster family changed his first name as soon as they got him. I said something to CYS once the case was finally opened, and I said, I know that they're not allowed to change his first name. And they said, no, we'll have a meeting about that. So they did, but they still call him that to this day. We have witnesses saying that they're still seeing him out in public calling him that name.
Wow.
On top of that, I was threatened. My life was threatened that once this is over, I was going to take a trip to the emergency room. And this is by the foster family of my youngest child. By ambulance, I was going to take a trip to the emergency room when this is over.
Mm-hmm.
Other people have seen him out in public at Phil's sandwich shop in Uniontown, and we now have a video of it where they've seen the foster mom and my son out there. And I guess my son was making some racket, and she says, if you don't shut the F up, I'm going to bust you by the end of the day.
Wow.
And they're not doing nothing about it.
That's
nothing.
Not something you want to hear from somebody who...
No.
From somebody who isn't the parent of your child. You know, I have a few people I talk to. I can help get you some advice. Obviously, the best advice I can give you is to go to your federal appellate court every time even if there's a continuance. But maybe we can talk to Kirk about this on Monday's show. If you could call in to Kirk's Law Corner and see what he thinks about bringing this to the federal level, because if you base case law on this Texas case on a federal level, you should be able to go somewhere with this. So we'll talk about that, and I'll get some advice from people that I know, and we'll see what we can do to help you through this process. And if you're seeing this video and you're a lawyer in Pennsylvania or an advocate or activist in Pennsylvania, please connect with Elizabeth Ann right through Facebook. Here's her name and her profile picture on Facebook below her picture here. And you know, I just want to wish you all the luck in the world, and like I said, I'll do as much as I can to help, but just getting your story out and being vocal will help change the public perception about what we're going through, and that, you know, although
I just really have.
Sorry? Oh.
It is lifted under the grounds that I still don't post no names or anything identifying my children, which still feels like a gag order to me. I mean, memories is all I have, and they're trying to take those away from me too now. That's what it seems like.
Yeah, that's
so
I don't believe that the press have those same restrictions under the First Amendment, and we cannot hold the American people to a lower standard of the First Amendment than the press. That doesn't make any sense. So that's something that needs to change, along with everything else. Judges have no jurisdiction over what you can and cannot post, especially pictures of your own children. That's
well, this is the same judge that did all this other stuff, same exact judge. And the thing is she gagged me for something somebody else said. The guy that said her name and put her name up on Facebook on my Justice for the Bilers page, that had nothing to do with me whatsoever. You know, and I still got the gag order for it. But
yeah, gag orders are unconstitutional. We have the First Amendment for a reason. If you are a judge handing out gag orders, that is treason. If you are handing out contempt orders based on your feelings, that is also treason, and you will answer to those charges sooner or later.
Well, that's good to know.
That's good to know. That's the goal here. Is, you know, there's tort claims that do not have a time limit, whether intentional or unintentional. You are responsible for any civil actions that are, or any actions that break civil law, constitutional law, or civil rights, constitutional law. There's no time limit. So whether it's a week from now or 10 years from now, and you're a judge handing out unconstitutional orders, you will pay for those actions. If even down to the people in family court, the clerk of court, you are also responsible for these actions indirectly, and you will be paying for it as well. That's a warning to you from the American people that this is going to stop, and people are going to be held accountable for this. This is a national health crisis. People paid for what they did, and they deserve their family whole. There is no court of public opinion here. This is law, okay? This is human rights, fundamental human rights. A parent has to their own children. You need to return this woman's children to her. She has done everything that you asked. It's time to give up the incentives that you get from keeping them apart and put them back together. Make things right before the American people have to make them right. So,
Amen. Is
there anything you'd like to say, just in case your children watch this, where we have about 3 minutes left? If you'd like to wrap up the show with a message to your kids, that might be appropriate.
Yeah, I would love to.
Okay.
Just in case that they are. I don't know if they are or not, but
and I'm
not going to say their names, but I will say, Mama loves you all three, guys. I will never stop fighting until the day you come home, and know that I go through just about as worse as anything can ever be every single day for you guys. And I will not stop until you are in my arms once again. And I love you guys so much. And your new dad, we both love you. And we can't wait till that day. So I will have to say God bless you. And I hope God keeps you guys safe till the next time we see you.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Well, I will be in touch. And until then, thank you very much for your time on the show. I really appreciate it. And thank you, everybody, for watching at home. If you're watching this after the fact, thank you for watching it after the fact. I really appreciate it. Have a great rest of your week. And I'll see you guys next Monday on Kirk's Law Corner.
Yes.
Hold on
I
one
will
second.
Be back.
Yep. Let me wrap this up and we can...
The benefits of trial by jury.
Oh, wrong minute.